2074, Earth has been severely damaged by climate change and global famine is rampant. Governments have collapsed one after another, leaving corporations as the dominant force, controlling almost everything and fiercely competing for the increasingly scarce natural resources. At Spiga Corporation, two employees witness security escorting a hooded man into a mysterious room. Inside, a man is attempting to extract sensitive information from him. This chain of events traces back 3 days earlier. Spiga employee Ben is having breakfast with his wife Laura with bacon, a now incredibly rare commodity, on the table. The news reports that terrorists have bombed a Spiga laboratory, killing dozens. Afterward, Ben takes an autonomous car to the company. Before entering the building, every employee's luggage is checked for security, and today the alarm suddenly goes off. After a cautious inspection, security finds that there is no malicious software in the bag, only an inappropriate video. Ben and his colleague Chad then present a software called Everclear, which can read and record a person's thoughts and dreams. Spiga's security chief, Julian, is interested in using it for interrogations, but the software's accuracy is still far from ideal. Ben and Chad must work to further optimize it. Meanwhile, in the slums, Theo is brought before the gangster boss Terrence by two henchmen. Terrence is upset that Theo has encroached on his business and even considers cutting off one of his fingers. However, when one of his men is injured while attempting to capture Theo, Terrence becomes intrigued and asks Theo to fight one of his men as a test of his skills. Within minutes, Theo showcases his incredible strength, impressing Terrence, who offers him a special deal. At the company, Ben uses hacking equipment to search for a woman named Elena. When the search results appear, he is shocked to discover that Elena is working at a top-secret club. To get close to her, Ben realizes he needs a promotion. Flashbacks reveal that Ben and Elena grew up in the slums together, until one day, Elena mysteriously disappeared. Since then, Ben has infiltrated the Green Zone trying to find her. That night, Laura tells Ben that she has received Spiga's approval to have children. Ben pretends to be happy, but in reality his marriage to Laura is more about her mother, Elizabeth, who is the head of Spiga's division. The next day, Laura sees a special client at her plastic surgery clinic. A wealthy old woman who demands that her young lover be made to look like her deceased husband when he was younger. Meanwhile, Ben calls Laura to tell her he's going out for drinks with colleagues. When Laura hears the words slums, she immediately panics, haunted by tortured memories. She must use an advanced spray to quickly heal the self-inflicted wounds. That evening, Ben and his colleagues head to the slums to indulge. They enter a bar hosting a cage fighting event, where alcohol and drugs disguised as inhalants are rampant. Chad, suffering from an overdose, becomes ill, and while he's vomiting, Ben secretly collects a small vial of his blood. As they leave the club, they run into an employee from the competing company in Azaji. Before the man can speak, Ben swiftly strikes, slamming his head into the pool, knocking him unconscious. Later, Ben visits a rundown building, rides up to the 18th floor on his motorcycle, and meets Theo, Elena's brother, now a cage fighter. Ben tells him he has found a lead on Elena and promises to get closer to her through a promotion. The next day, Ben receives a device called Whistler, a riot control tool that emits high-frequency sound waves to induce nausea. He then meets with Chad and quietly activates the Whistler, forcing Chad to rush to the bathroom. Taking advantage of this, Ben uses the blood sample he previously collected to unlock Chad's computer and download crucial files. However, Chad quickly returns and Ben is forced to activate Whistler again. This time he is affected as well, but he endures the discomfort to finish stealing the data. At the end of the workday, all employees undergo a scanning check. Ben seizes the opportunity to secretly slip the storage device into Chad's pocket. The scanner alarms go off, and Chad is immediately taken away for questioning by Julian, which is the scene we saw at the beginning of the story. Meanwhile, Elizabeth announces Chad's position is now vacant, and Ben will soon face fierce competition. The scene shifts to 12 years ago, where a young Ben, still using his birth name Aaron, witnesses his father's suicide. However, Ben is a smart child and invents a special pair of goggles that allow him to observe his surroundings while pretending to be blind. One day, a man named Reed discovers his secret. Ben flees only to be rescued by Elena, who becomes fascinated by his goggles. Together, they begin using the goggles to copy other people's eye data to bypass the system and get extra food. From that moment on, the two became inseparable, and Ben fell deeply in love with Elena. Eventually, Elena received sponsorship, and before leaving she gave Ben a ring as a parting gift. Soon after, Reed found Ben again and proposed they monetize his invention. Back in the present, Ben uses his hacking equipment to watch Chad's interrogation but is forced to shut it down when guards come by. Meanwhile, Chad is enduring extreme pain during Julian's questioning, with Julian asking why he went to the red zone. Chad shifts the blame onto Ben. In response, Ben seeks out his competitor Roger and successfully persuades him to pin the responsibility on Chad to keep his own hands clean in the promotion race. Julian quietly asks Ben a few questions, But Ben sticks to his lies, hiding his hacking equipment under the table to avoid detection. However, when he returns to retrieve it later, he finds that it's gone. Ben is soon called to Julian's office after Julian discovers that he had taken a riot control device called Whistler from the security department. Ben pretends that Chad ordered him to do it, and Julian goes to question Chad, only to discover that his memory has been completely wiped. This was Elizabeth's doing. She wanted to resolve the matter swiftly to calm the shareholders. That night, Chad is dumped in the red zone with no memory of his own name. Meanwhile, Roger takes Ben's equipment, attempting to use it on his own computer, but accidentally triggers a self-destruct program, forcing him to shut it down. In the red zone, Terrence and his henchmen find Theo and treat the injuries he sustained in his last cage fight. Theo's boyfriend, Anthony, worries that Theo is competing too soon, but when Theo learns that scouts will be attending the match, potentially opening doors to the green zone, he agrees without hesitation, eager for the chance to get closer to Elena. Before the match, Theo approaches his opponent, conversing with him, even convincing him to hand over his weapon willingly. The fight begins, and although his opponent is larger, Theo manages to take the upper hand. However, with the crowd cheering, the opponent rallies and Theo, realizing he's about to lose, decides to fight back by pulling a bone weapon from his opponent and stabbing him in the face before delivering a final blow to win the match. Afterward, Terrence kills the defeated fighter with the trophy and declares Theo his new star fighter. Meanwhile, Ben receives a visit from Reed, who is now also working at Spiga under a false identity. Reed tells Ben that a member of the executive club's entourage was shot while trying to escape, but he isn't sure if the person was Elena. The scene shifts 6 years earlier. Ben encounters Elena again at a restaurant, where she helps her family run their business during her spare time. Ben is skeptical about her scholarship program. He returns the ring to Elena, and she goes back to school, where she must inject herself with some kind of serum before she can attend class, after watching fast-paced advertisements. Ben watches from the window and sees that the excessive stimulation causes Elena to have an epileptic seizure. He immediately broke the window, helping Elena calm down before taking her away. They escape to the rooftop, venting their anger and helplessness, sharing a passionate kiss. Meanwhile, when Laura returned home, she found the police arresting her maid, accusing her of stealing real bacon. Laura lied, claiming she had sent it and simply forgot to register it, handing over the bacon to appease the police's suspicions. Afterward, the maid explained that she had only intended to bring it to a sick child in the apartment. Upon hearing this, Laura offered to visit. Soon after, the guards summoned Laura because rumors about her being a friendly doctor had spread, and a crowd of poor people had gathered outside the gates seeking help. Laura agreed to see them, but the crowd's emotions grew agitated, and the situation began to spiral out of control. The guards were forced to use riot control measures to maintain order. Amid the chaos, an object flew over the fence and struck Laura on the head, while her maid was eventually exhausted from the ordeal. In Sanjay, children were undergoing propaganda education, learning how to report any suspicious activities at home to the police. Meanwhile, Vice President Diana, pregnant, didn't want her future child to grow up in such an environment. Later, when Diana went to Spiga to negotiate with Elizabeth, she secretly hinted to Elizabeth that she was considering switching jobs. During the meeting preparations, Elizabeth asked her team how to win Diana over. Ben quickly suggested a plan: to fake Diana's death and use the corpse of a previously deceased escort as evidence to offer to Sanjay. After the meeting, Elizabeth met Diana in the restroom and used a special screen to conceal their presence. Diana explained that Sanjay was developing a new type of seed that could grow crops in the desert, but she also revealed a technological virus on her arm, a device monitoring her which would release toxins if she attempted to escape. They needed to find a way to bypass it. Soon after, doctors brought in the deceased escort's body, but her face had been replaced with Diana's, making it hard for Ben to tell whether it was Elena. In the final negotiation meeting, Elizabeth secretly used a poison needle hidden under her nails to cut Diana's hand, while Sanjay's executives brought in a giant, mentally connected to their minds, and force-fed him. During this process, Diana began to feel unwell. Ben seized the opportunity to barge in with a defibrillator, forcing Sanjay's executive to temporarily disable the tech virus on Diana's body to avoid any accidents. According to plan, the defibrillator failed, and Ben pretended to take Diana to the ambulance. In the elevator, a disguised screen opened, revealing Julian and the escort's corpse. Ben used this moment to transfer the tech virus from Diana's body onto the corpse, then reactivated the screen to cover everything up. Once Julian succeeded in bringing Diana back to consciousness, and the elevator reached the ground floor, Ben told Sanjay's executives that Diana was dead, with the virus on the escort's arm confirming this. Later, Ben checked the escort's personal belongings and was shocked and saddened to find Laura's ring. He immediately found Theo and delivered the bad news. But when Theo took the ring, his DNA triggered a hidden video, a message from Elena. It turned out that Elena had given the ring to a colleague, hoping it would eventually make its way to Theo. Meanwhile, Roger went to the red zone to find hacker Ramona and asked her to crack Ben's device. Ramona set a strange challenge. Roger had to chase down and eat a rat from the trash heap. To get the promotion, Roger reluctantly accepted the challenge, eventually vomiting in disgust. But that was enough for Ramona to give him a hacking key, wrapped in leaves to avoid scanner detection. At that moment, Roger noticed the security camera and angrily tried to attack Laura, but she easily tripped him and kicked him out. Later, inside the company, Roger successfully cracked the device and found information linking Ben to Elena. He immediately went to visit his powerful father, George, asking for Elena's file. George proposed an exchange. Roger must convince his brother to leave the family estate and seek treatment at a clinic. However, Roger refused his father's condition. Meanwhile, a flashback revealed the truth behind Elena losing her scholarship. At the time, Spiga employee Rebecca offered her a job as an escort. When Elena's father, Gustavo, found out, he angrily pulled a gun and threatened Rebecca, with her bodyguard also drawing a weapon in response. In this critical moment, Ben arrived and successfully diffused the conflict, and Rebecca eventually left. However, Elena was still devastated. They could no longer afford the rent. To help her, Ben and Theo devised a scam. Theo went to a currency exchange kiosk with $, while Ben hacked into the system and manipulated the exchange rates to their advantage. Theo successfully exchanged for euros, but the guards began to suspect something, and Ben created chaos by messing with all the exchange rates, allowing Theo to escape. Later, Ben brought the money to Elena, but she had an unexpected update. She had regained her scholarship because the original winner had been caught cheating with a neural implant device. However, she refused to leave Ben and decided to forego the scholarship. Just then, a man on a bicycle suddenly drove by the restaurant window and shot at them. They quickly ducked to the ground, but the attacker threw a bomb, causing a fire that destroyed their money. The firefighters refused to put out the fire because Gustavo had unpaid rent, and Gustavo blamed Ben, thinking his scam had angered the wrong people. A few days later, Gustavo was arrested for his debts, and when Elena visited him in prison, she learned he had contracted pneumonia. To save her father, she had no choice but to accept Rebecca's job offer. Rebecca had Elena sign a contract, promising not only to help pay off Gustavo's debts but also to get him released. At that moment, Ben arrived to try to stop Elena, but she begged him to forget her. After Elena left, Rebecca smirked and revealed the truth: she had orchestrated the fire. In a fit of rage, Ben tried to attack her, but her bodyguard subdued him with an electric baton. Later, Ben met Reed in a bar, an old acquaintance who had left the red zone months ago and was now living under a false identity in Spiga. Ben promised to keep his secret but, in exchange, asked Reed to help him enter the green zone. In Reed's secret lab, they began planning a new identity for Ben. Back to the present, Laura started designing their future child, but Ben tried to make these children look nothing like him. He was extremely repulsed by the idea and secretly asked Reed to get him some birth control. Meanwhile, Elizabeth met with Diana, who had a new face as part of the deal. She brought important intel. A genius scientist, Sanjay, had found a way to make crops salt-tolerant, allowing them to grow in seawater. This technology could revolutionize agriculture, as seawater covers most of the Earth's surface. However, Diana didn't know Sanjay's current whereabouts. At the same time, Roger tried to access Elena's file but was stopped by Reed, who told him that the file was classified. Later, Reed met with Ben, handing him the birth control pills and mentioning that Roger was looking for Elena. Ben thought that the file had already been thoroughly modified, and Roger wouldn't be able to see any key details, so he suggested just sending it to him. When Roger opened the file on his phone, the system secretly downloaded a tracking device. Roger had no choice but to agree to his father's request and go see his brother. A few years ago, his brother had undergone a neural implant surgery that severely damaged the emotional center of his brain. Roger convinced him to seek treatment, using their shared hatred of their father as leverage, with the condition that Roger would receive a promotion and send George to the red zone. George agreed and arranged something for Roger, but it inadvertently triggered Ben's tracker alarm. Ben followed Roger all the way to a luxury hotel and was shocked to see Elena surrounded by Spiga bodyguards. Elena took the elevator to meet Roger, but she claimed to be Anastasia and fabricated a false story about the past. Downstairs, Ben sneaked into their room and used equipment to listen in. Roger questioned Elena's true identity, and she only mentioned the incident at the restaurant but denied knowing Ben. This infuriated Roger, who picked up a corkscrew and cut her, forcing her to reveal the truth. In a tense moment, Ben hacked into the hotel's air purification system, triggering an alarm that forced everyone to evacuate. Elena was taken away by bodyguards and Ben lost the chance to follow her. Back at the company, Ben hurried to attend the Everclear project presentation. Despite being late, he gained support by promising to make the project operational by the end of the month. Meanwhile, Roger recalled Elena's story about the restaurant and went to the red zone to find her former teacher. He paid for more information, including Gustavo's phone number, which was then sent to Ben's tracker. Roger then went to the prison and told Gustavo that Elena was dead. Using Gustavo's sorrow and anger, Roger showed him a photo of Ben, which Gustavo immediately recognized as the person who ruined Elena's life. Roger then offered him a chance for revenge. On the other side, Laura was wandering the red zone when she was suddenly attacked by a thug wearing a hoodie. She tried to resist but was pinned to the ground. At that moment, the scene suddenly disappeared, revealing that this was just a simulation as part of Laura's trauma therapy. She asked to try again but was discouraged by the therapist, which made her angrily leave. Soon after, Ben tracked Roger to the ruins of Gustavo's restaurant. At this point, Roger had already gathered all the information. Ben promised to convince Elizabeth to promote Roger in exchange for his silence. On the surface, Roger seemed to agree, but when they shook hands, Ben discovered that Roger had secretly recorded the entire conversation. Roger sneered and launched an attack. The two fought fiercely. In the end, after several heavy blows, Ben strangled Roger to death. Afterward, he called Theo for help with the body. They stuffed Roger into a self-driving car, and Ben hacked into the GPS system, setting the car to drive into a dust storm area. Then Ben returned home, burned his clothes, and calmly spent time with Laura. However, Ben's nightmare had only just begun. One day during a company presentation, someone brought in a bag. Inside, the body began to twitch violently. Fortunately, it was just a nightmare, but it triggered Ben's psychological and physical stress. After breakfast, Laura decided to go back to the red zone to confront her trauma. This triggered her memories. 8 years ago, Laura and a friend went to a bar in the red zone to party, where she danced with a boy named Bradley. To find a private space, they slipped out through the back door, but Bradley suddenly attacked her, knocked her out, and took her back to his family's apartment. He immediately made a phone call and demanded ransom from Elizabeth. Security Chief Connor wanted to use the container restoration protocol to pay the ransom, but since the protocol mainly protects company secrets and rarely helps victims, Elizabeth refused to pay. An argument ensued, and Elizabeth disobeyed Connor's orders, sending Julian to find her daughter. Meanwhile, Bradley and his family cut off Laura's ear and sent the video to Elizabeth, demanding more ransom and threatening to hand Laura over to Inazagi. Elizabeth finally agreed to pay, and Connor activated the protocol. Julian threatened a corrupt police officer and found out where Bradley was hiding. He sent drones to listen in, successfully hearing Bradley and his friends talking. One of the friends warned that Spiga would kill, and the only way to survive was to kill Laura first. At that moment, Laura used a scalpel to cut the ropes, killed Bradley's sister, and as Bradley rushed in, Julian arrived just in time and shot Bradley. Julian took Laura away, and as they left, Laura saw a child crying for their deceased relative. When she reunited with her mother, Laura suspected that her father's death was connected to the container restoration protocol. Elizabeth denied it, but Laura resented her because of it. Now, Laura had successfully entered the red zone, visited her old maid, and treated a girl with an infected wound. Just as Laura was preparing to leave, more people came to seek her help. She decided to cancel her plans with Ben and help them instead. At this moment, Huron, a mob boss who had lost both legs, appeared and kidnapped Laura, proposing that she open a clinic on his turf. Initially, Laura refused and had a panic attack, but eventually she accepted Huron's offer and chose to treat those in need rather than perform cosmetic surgeries for wealthy women. Meanwhile, Ben modified Roger's watch and handed it over to Theo, who took it to a bar to attract the attention of 2 Inazagi employees. The employees bought the watch from Theo, paving the way for Ben's next plan. The following day, 2 scavengers set up a trap in the desert to prevent a car from arriving. Inside the car, they discovered Roger's body. Ben adjusted Everclear in his office and requested Reed's help to test it, letting Reed see Roger's condition. Soon after, Roger's watch reconnected to the network and appeared inside the Inazagi building. This led Elizabeth and Julian to believe that Roger had betrayed them and that Inazagi might already know about their plan, urging them to act quickly. Julian and the team tracked down Inazagi executive Philip and kidnapped him, intending to interrogate him using Everclear. Ben prepared the equipment to begin the interrogation and learned from Philip that the genius scientist Sanjay was being held at an Inazagi facility called White Horse Town. Ben then threatened Philip, showing him his most shameful memory. Philip had killed his own child to stop Inazagi's experiments on him. Despite this, Philip still refused to cooperate, so Ben erased his memory. Meanwhile, a guard found hacking equipment in Roger's office and brought it to Julian. Julian went to George to investigate. George saw files about Elena and shared some information with Julian, leading him to visit Elena. Just as Julian was about to extract information from her, Ben suddenly appeared, saying he knew the information they needed. Ben and Elena exchanged glances, but he left without speaking to her. Soon after, Philip was doused with alcohol and left next to an alcoholic support group tent, making him believe his memory loss was due to excessive drinking. Julian returned to Elena, and Elena knew she had to lie. She told Julian that Roger had asked Elizabeth, not Ben. Julian didn't think much of it, and when he got home, received a photo of Roger's dead body from Ben. Julian assumed Roger's death was due to infighting and requested Elizabeth's approval to use Everclear to interrogate Roger's department. In the red zone, Terrence met with an Inazagi executive who was sponsoring a boxer with excessive body modifications. Terrence arranged a match, and Theo believed he wouldn't be able to defeat his opponent. However, Terrence offered him an enhancement surgery, and during the match, Theo became unusually violent, nearly knocking his opponent out of the ring. After the match, Terrence arranged for a working girl to calm Theo down in a way that violated his will. Later, Ben discovered he could no longer access the Everclear program, so he contacted Reed to check Roger's file. Upon learning that Roger's body had been discovered, Ben speculated that Everclear would be used for interrogation. He then began to recreate a new version of Everclear and asked the secret laboratory to help erase memories associated with Aaron. After the backup of Ben's neural imprint was saved to a hard drive, Reed started the erasure process. When he woke up, Ben found himself sitting in a car outside his house with no memory of what had happened. Ignoring his headache, he reunited with Laura, who noticed he was more affectionate than usual. To express his love, Ben planned to buy her jewelry but accidentally chose a ring that resembled Elena's. Later, Julian interrogated Ben using Everclear. Due to his erased memories, Ben felt genuine sorrow for Roger's death. Ben was immediately released, and Reed checked him over, finding that without his obsession with Elena, Ben was much happier. To preserve this change, Reed decided not to restore his memories. Soon after, Ben approached Julian, saying he wanted to help him find out who killed his friend. Ben hacked into the car's GPS, discovered it had been tampered with, and gave Julian the correct location of the crime scene. They went to the burned-down restaurant and found Roger's tie clip but no surveillance cameras. Fortunately, they discovered a meteorological monitoring system, and Ben used it to obtain wind speed and sound pattern information, reconstructing a 3D crime scene. Meanwhile, Reed received a warning video recorded by Ben before his memory was erased. Ben reminded Reed that if his memory wasn't restored within 72 hours, Reed's identity would be exposed to Spiga Corporation. Desperate, Reed tried to crack Ben's lock system, but he eventually received another warning for 36 hours later. During this time, Theo became addicted to the enhancement surgeries, craving more thrilling private moments, which terrified Anthony and made him rebel. Theo became angry and violent, and Anthony decided to leave their home. Alone, Theo spent the night with the same working girl as before. In the evening, Theo took more anger powder and prepared for the next match. When the match began, Theo's opponent took the upper hand, but after the powder took effect, Theo became extremely violent and ended up killing his opponent. After the match, once Theo calmed down, he realized what he had done and admitted he had a problem. Back with Ben, he and Laura became intimate, and they didn't use contraception. Afterward, Laura told Ben about her new clinic, and Ben expressed his support, giving her a ring. Soon after, Ben's computer completed the 3D reconstruction of the crime scene. Ben was shocked to see an image of himself killing Roger. Completely bewildered, Ben ran a facial recognition program to investigate his accomplices and discovered it was the famous fighter Theo. At an Inazagi facility, Sarki was preparing a saline solution demonstration when a power outage occurred, followed by an explosion outside. Spiga soldiers stormed in, killing Sarki's assistant and disabling Inazagi's tech virus. Although Spiga soldiers were prepared to take Sarki, he only cared about taking his research and saving the world with any company that funded him. When a helicopter arrived, a snowstorm caused it to crash, and Inazagi sent vehicles to the area. Spiga soldiers fired to hold the position, but time was running out. To avoid conflict with shareholders, Spiga sent drones to bomb everything, destroying everything in their path. Theo realized he was being followed and almost attacked, only to discover it was Ben. Theo took Ben back to his apartment and showed him Elena's photo, but it had no effect until Ben saw Elena's ring, which was identical to the one he had bought for Laura. In one of the photos, Ben saw Reed and recognized him as a colleague, which made him start to realize something was wrong. Theo and Ben decided to look for Reed, and as they were leaving, they encountered a disheveled Chad. When Chad saw Ben, it triggered a memory of how Ben had ruined his life and he tried to attack him. Ben easily knocked Chad down, and the two of them used Ben's GPS history to locate Reed's secret lab. Reed successfully cracked Ben's emergency lock system but needed a DNA sample to cancel it. At that moment, Ben and Theo arrived and used muscle memory to open the door. Reed explained everything to them, and Ben canceled the emergency lock with his finger, handing Reed the portable hard drive. The three of them argued about whether or not to restore Ben's memory, and Ben ultimately decided to leave and think alone. Theo attended the funeral of the fighter he had killed. The deceased sister recognized Theo and forgave him, which caused Theo to break down. Determined to leave it all behind, Theo returned to his apartment to pack his things, but Terrence found him and questioned why he skipped training, informing him that he had arranged a match in the green zone. Meanwhile, Chad became obsessed with Ben and started killing anyone who looked like him. In the evening, Ben returned home to find Laura stressed from caring for new patients, and she began drinking heavily. The two of them eventually became intimate. After Laura fell asleep, Ben regained his memory and with Jack's help, restored his original memories. Ben then shared the modified 3D reconstruction with Julian, falsifying evidence that Chad killed Roger and hiding Theo's facial information. Elizabeth came to Laura's clinic, expressing concern about her daughter working in a dangerous area. A confrontation broke out, and Elizabeth revealed that Laura's father wasn't kidnapped, but had attempted to defect and was killed by people she had instructed. As she left, Elizabeth threatened Laura to either shut down the clinic or she would take matters into her own hands. Later, Elizabeth met with Ben and told him about a promotion opportunity. Excited, Ben tried to contact Laura when he got home, but she didn't answer. Suddenly, Ben was attacked by a mysterious shadow and knocked unconscious. At Ritz Manor, Ben's daughter was playing hide-and-seek with her friends, hiding under her parents' bed when she accidentally pressed a button that activated a DNA detection device, opening a hidden compartment containing mysterious technology. When Ben woke up, he found himself imprisoned by Inazagi's assault team. The team, led by Tobias, shot Ben in the leg and threatened him to speak. At that moment, Laura returned and was captured. Tobias threatened to kill her. Laura begged Ben to speak, but Ben noticed she wasn't wearing her ring, which made him suspect something was off. Tobias shot Laura, but the reality started to change, revealing that Ben was actually in Spiga's simulated environment. It turned out that this was a test set up by Elizabeth to ensure Ben's loyalty to the company, and she had undergone a similar test to earn her promotion. The next day, Ben attended Philip's Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, taunting Philip and using stories obtained from his brain. After the meeting, Philip found Ben and Ben made a deal. He would hand over the Everclear program in exchange for 2 safe passages and a dead body to make Spiga believe he was dead. Afterward, Ben used his newly acquired promotion status to enter an exclusive club, and after an interview, he attended a party where he finally found Elena. Elena told him that she wasn't happy to see him, as they had changed and could never go back to the past. Ben agreed to leave for now but promised to try again. When Ben returned home, he was surprised by a visit from Reed, who just wanted to say goodbye. Ben's daughter brought the technical documents she had found to school, but the teacher confiscated them, leading to an investigation by the authorities. After Reed left, Ben became worried and called Philip to speed up the evacuation plan. In the red zone, Julian and the soldiers found Chad and prepared to arrest him, but Chad mistakenly thought one of the soldiers was Ben, leading to a firefight that resulted in Chad's death. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Laura discovered a theft and used ultraviolet lights to identify the thief, a patient with an artificial heart. Laura locked the thief in a closet and sought help from Euron, but Euron told her to handle it herself and reminded her not to show weakness in the red zone. To protect the clinic, Laura had one of Euron's men cut off the thief's hand as a warning. Laura then went to find Elizabeth, stating that she would never shut down the clinic unless Elizabeth's body was placed at the door. Elizabeth was very impressed by this. At the same time, Terrence took Theo to a luxurious estate in the green zone, arranging a match for him. The match was held in a pool, and Theo refused to use anger powder, resulting in his enhanced opponent easily defeating him. Due to guilt, Theo barely resisted until Terrence pulled him out and took him back to the club. Terrence revealed that he had kidnapped Anthony and demanded Theo contact Spiga's powerful executive, Ben. At the exclusive club, Elena met with a maid, who was working with her to prepare revenge for the treatment women had suffered in Spiga. The maid knew about Ben's connection to Elizabeth and suggested using Ben to help them carry out their plan. Soon after, Philip waited for Ben to facilitate the evacuation for him and Elena, but to his surprise, Ben asked him to take Reed and his daughter instead of him. Ben used a copy of the Everclear program to pay Reed and gave him a warm hug as a farewell. Another woman and her daughter were hidden in a truck, wearing masks and covered with seeds, and the guards mistook it for a supply transport vehicle. Afterward, Ben went to find Elena to apologize for abandoning their escape opportunity, but now that he had been promoted, he would have access to more technology and secrets, which he could use to secure a safe passage. Elena became more friendly and comforted Ben, telling him that he had made the right decision. The two kissed and spent a passionate night together. The next day, Julian buried Chad and Ben and Laura moved into Chad's old house. When Ben went to his new luxurious office, Laura confirmed that she was pregnant. If you enjoyed the recap, please leave a like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.